Now from WATN, it's Local 24 This Week with Richard Ransom.
Thanks for being here on this Sunday, and welcome to Local 24 This Week. We do our best to give you the real story behind the week's big stories. Later, I'll be joined by Corey Strong, who recently announced his candidacy for Congress, hoping to unseat incumbent Steve Cohen. But first, our topics for today. And the Memphis mayor's race is easily front and center this week. All three of the major candidates stepping up the rhetoric, you could say throwing around the mud, or having others do it for them. Yet it looks like voters are no closer to seeing them on the same stage for a debate. We'll talk about the Mississippi primary results and whether a national story about ICE raids might affect the outcome of the November general election. And mayoral harassment? Surveillance video has a Local 24 News investigation raising that question this week about former Memphis and Shelby County Mayor A.C. Wharton. Let's get started by introducing you to my roundtable, which consists of one person right now, Susan Thorpe, political consultant with Thorpe Communications. I'm also joined by Local 24 political analyst Otis Sanford, who's on the phone with us from Miami. He's down there for the National Association of Black Journalists Convention. So you two, let's talk about the mayor's race first, and things starting to get a little ugly, a little dicey, I think you could say. And I want to start by showing a comment made by activist Angela Rye. She is a CNN commentator, and she was brought in by the Sawyer campaign, and we'll have another rally for her over the weekend. But at a rally on August 8th, she said she didn't know Strickland personally, but she didn't like him, and that when she thought of perpetrators of racism and bigotry, she thought of him. She offered few specifics of why she thought he was racist or why she had compared him to an offshoot of the Democratic Party that espoused white supremacy and seceded from the party during the 1948 presidential election, talking about Dixiecrats, of course. So, Otis, I'm going to let you take the first stab at this. What are your thoughts about those remarks and Sawyer's apparent reluctance to disassociate herself from them?
Well, Richard, I think that those remarks were reprehensible. I mean, here's someone who was born in Seattle, Washington, lives in Washington, D.C. As far as I can tell, she's never spent any time in Memphis except to fly in and out. And she's determined that Strickland is a racist with no substantiation. Give me a break here. I mean, she might be an accomplished political activist, and I saw one report where she gets paid about $200,000 a year to do commentary on CNN, but she knows nothing about Memphis. And frankly, right now, Tammy Sawyer owns those remarks and has to take responsibility for them. So she will have to address those going forward. You know, there's a lot to complain about with Strickland. If you wanted to complain about his escort list at City Hall or surveillance tactics. But this is, as I said, reprehensible, and it'll backfire against Sawyer in the election.
Susan, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree with Otis more. I find her comments to be extraordinarily off-putting and just blatantly wrong. I mean, for her to come into this town and say she doesn't know Jim Strickland, but he's a racist, is absolutely outrageous. I know Jim Strickland. He's not a racist. But she can, you know, Tammy Sawyer is, as I said before, she's got this online campaign going with these online activists and bringing in Angela Rye, who's a flamethrower from the word go. And yes, she does. Tammy Sawyer does own those remarks. Tammy Sawyer has to explain those remarks. Tammy Sawyer wants to be, in my opinion, kind of the AOC of Memphis. She's having a hard time, and when Mayor Harrington referred to her, diminished her really as a peripheral candidate, based on the recent polls that I had seen and heard about, he's probably right.
Otis, you in fact have said that you think that Sawyer, based also on her handling of the Frazier unrest, was a borderline fringe candidate. Do you still maintain that?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can say that she is a serious candidate just because she is an office holder now, and nobody else in the race other than Mayor Strickland is an office holder now that I'm aware of. So you have to give her some credibility for that. But the way she has conducted this campaign, and especially with these comments, which to me, she's acting like Trump in reverse, because Trump went to that rally and they said, send her back. And Trump said, I didn't say it, they did. Well, Tammy Sawyer said the other day, I didn't say that he was a racist. Angela Rye did. Well, you brought Angela Rye to town. This is on you, and it is absolutely disgraceful.
Well, let's move on to Willie Harrington, who would just assume that Tammy Sawyer was not in the race, based on comments he has made recently, telling the Daily Memphian, it is common sense that this is a two-person race. All the other candidates are minor distractions. The media is trying to make this a distraction. The young lady talking about Tammy Sawyer is a distraction. And then he says a very minor distraction. Susan, what do you think about the former mayor's comments?
Well, I don't consider her a minor distraction. You know, from Mayor Harrington's point of view, that, yeah, perhaps she is a distraction, but he really, his race, honestly, if you're going to believe what the polls say, is not against Tammy Sawyer. It's against Mayor Strickland. And he ought to focus on, Willie Harrington ought to focus on his main opponent, which really is Mayor Strickland, even though Tammy Sawyer is out there trying to pull votes. Her votes will be pulled away from Willie Harrington.
She was offended and said, why won't you say my name if I'm just noise? She said that on Twitter and said this is patriarchy, and I know Memphians don't want a repeat of this thinking. We're better than that. So that was her opportunity to weigh in on what the former mayor said. Right. And the former mayor also weighed in on the current mayor, describing the current mayor as being led by a power structure. When I was mayor, nobody led me. To be a real leader, you must be independent and accountable for your decisions. There is an elitism in Memphis that is comprised of the wealthy, to which Strickland responded through his campaign spokesperson. It was under Harrington's watch, Memphis first made the list of the most dangerous cities in America, and it's going to take more than 3.5 years to clean up the mess he left behind. Otis, you first on this one.
Well, I mean, I think all of that is just legitimate a negative campaigning that you would expect to see in a mayor's race, especially as we get close to early voting, which is less than 5 weeks away here. So I'm not surprised by that. I'm not put off by that, because that's just campaign rhetoric. It pales in comparison to what Angela Rye said the other day. So I have absolutely no problem with this.
Well, I think that both Harrington and Tammy Sawyer they're in a position where they have to throw out inflammatory rhetoric, because they really don't have the funds to stage any major television or media campaign. So wherever they can attract the media, even if it's just with absurd charges and inflammatory, as we said, inflammatory words, they have to do that in order to attract attention. They're up against a very well-liked incumbent mayor who has a huge war chest, and he's going to use that.
Glad you brought that up, because he is using that. Yes. Let's show one of his new ads as he tries to launch his television campaign.
4 years ago, you wanted change. We're delivering that change, improving services to all neighborhoods and advancing equity for all citizens, hiring more police officers and paving more roads, increasing opportunities for our youth. Today, we have 20,000 more jobs, $19 billion in development. Do we have more challenges? Of course we do. But we've made real progress, and Memphis has momentum. Together, we can do even more the next 4 years.
Memphis has momentum. You knew that, right? But what do you think of the spot?
I think it's a pretty positive spot. He puts out there the number of police officers that have been hired since the first of this year. It's certainly trying to make up for the shortfall that he faced when he came in. And he talks about it's a positive ad. This is the beginning of his campaign. He's setting up, he's saying, I promised, I'm delivering, and it's going to get even better. I think it's an excellent way to start his campaign.
Otis, you've seen the ad before you went down to Miami?
Yes, I did. And, the thing that struck me is, which I expected him to do, was to have a lot of racial diversity in the ad. But this is just the first of what you're going to see as a heavy advertising blitz by Mayor Strickland going forward. He's already promised that he's going to put a lot of ads on African-American radio stations, radio stations that cater to African-American audiences. He's going to be spending heavily there. So you're going to see a lot of Jim Strickland in the coming weeks.
All right, let's step down to Mississippi, your home state, Otis, where we had a primary this past week, and the governor's race, obviously the one folks are more familiar with. Tate Reeves almost getting to that 50% mark where he would not need a runoff, but he will be facing Bill Waller Jr. in 2 or 3 weeks here. The former Supreme Court Chief Justice, Tate Reeves, is the lieutenant governor down there. Waller considered maybe the more moderate of the conservatives, right, Otis? But what do you think? Is there any chance at all of winning the runoff on the 27th?
Well, absolutely, Waller is the more moderate of the 3 who ran in the primary. But the fact that Reeves got almost 50%, he got almost 49%. That's, you know, he only needed a few more votes to get him over the top. I don't see anything that's going to stop him from getting that nomination and facing Jim Hood in November.
So Jim Hood, the popular Democrat, the Attorney General from Mississippi. I wonder, this big story in Mississippi this week, the 680 immigrants who were rounded up in Mississippi this week. Do you think this is going to play into the gubernatorial race?
Oh,
Susan?
I think that it absolutely will bleed into the gubernatorial race, and I think it will be part, not all, but part of Hood's campaign for the he's the Democratic nominee, but for the Democratic votes in Mississippi. There'll be a fight over it, but it very much will be part of the campaign. But I have to say something about the Republican race for the nomination for governor. Mr. Foster. Robert Foster, who came in 3rd. I guess he finally realized that the women of Mississippi no more wanted him in the governor's mansion in a room up there than they wanted to be in a room alone with him. So I thought he threw that out to make a splash, and I think it cost him a lot of votes.
Well, he did win DeSoto and Tate County, but that was about it, Otis.
Yeah, I agree with Susan on that. And I do think that the race the other day gave Jim Hood a major campaign issue to run on, and I think he can mobilize and energize the Democrats and even the independents, the few that are in Mississippi, over that issue. The problem is Mississippi is still a flaming red state, and you have to give Reeves, assuming he wins the runoff, the edge here just because of the numbers.
I'll tell you that why the Republicans already are scared of Hood is because they've already started staging advertisements on TV attacking Hood and that he's not one of us. So I think that the dirty campaign has already started. They're scared of Hood, and I think it'll be, even though it's likely that Reeves will win and he's got the edge, even in the final election, but I think they're scared of Hood.
Okay, we are way over for this segment. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a Local 24 News investigation this week exposing neighbor versus neighbor, and one of those neighbors is a former mayor of Shelby County in Memphis. We'll be right back.
Your story begins the moment you enroll at Concord Career College to become a medical office professional. In as few as 8 months, you will be ready to begin an exciting profession that is as fulfilling as it is challenging. You'll have a rewarding career with a bright future, giving you an immense sense of accomplishment. Opportunity awaits. Enroll at Concord Career College today by visiting us online at concord.edu. Your story starts now.
Start your engines. It's time to scratch it rich at Gold Strike. From August 1st to September 28th, your favorite games are even better. Scratch your way to a share of $2.5 million in great prizes. And don't miss drawings every Saturday to win fantastic free play. Plus, on September 28th, you could even win a 2019 Infiniti QX80. More fun, more play, more ways to win. Scratch it rich at Gold Strike.
Hey, everybody, it's back!
Phone holsters.
Denim on denim? On denim on denim?
No, the sensation is back at Zaxby's.
I'll call ahead.
The Zensation Salad is back. And introducing the new Zensation Filet Sandwich Meal with hand-breaded chicken, Asian slaw, wonton strips, and citrus vinaigrette. Both served with an egg roll. The Zensation Salad and Filet Sandwich Meal. Only at Zaxby's.
On denim on denim.
Live, they're unveiling new drink flavors right here on Local Memphis Live, and we sit down with UT plastic surgeons to help give you the makeover of a lifetime at 9.
Monday morning on Good Day Memphis, we're getting your kids back into school mode. We break down some foolproof, healthy lunch options in your local health alert.
And staggering heat is expected as we start out the week. How hot it will get and when you can expect some relief, I've got it in your most accurate forecast.
Local 24 this week with Richard Ransom.
All right, Local 24's Jenny DiPrizio joining us now to talk about her report this week. Several reports, actually, that have come out showing a rift, shall we say, between former Mayor A.C. Wharton and his neighbor over a home that she occasionally rents out as an Airbnb, which is a perfectly legal thing to do. What did you discover?
Yeah, you know, the woman rents out the Airbnb. Her house is the Airbnb, and it ends up that it appears that A.C. Wharton doesn't like that. So one Sunday morning, A.C. Wharton shows up at her door. On the Ring camera, it's caught, and he questions her about renting out these rooms and things. And according to the woman, from there, he makes a comment like, I'm going to call, you know, I'm the former mayor, I'm going to call people, I'm going to get the laws changed. And he walks away.
He's working on both of those things.
He is, yes. Actually. Mm-hmm. And so then next thing you know, for the next 3 weeks, she has all sorts of people show up at her house. City code enforcement, county code enforcement, the health department, the fire inspector shows up. And then I would say the most disturbing is the police. They do surveillance on her house for 3 days under the claims that it's a supposed brothel. She's shocked when the officer shows up and tells her what's going on. And he basically says, the director ordered me to do this. I've been here. There's nothing going on. But I wanted to let you know.
So you had since showed up with her to environmental court where she had to address a issue there, a citation there. But the mayor's not saying much.
Mayor isn't really saying anything. The official kind of statement from the mayor's spokesperson is that Mayor Wharton didn't get a special treatment, that anyone could call in a complaint about anything and it will be handled equally. But, you know, people will say, hey, look, I've been calling about weeds in my part of town and I didn't get that kind of treatment, you know? Yeah,
so what do you think about this? Is a misuse of his influence?
Well, I'm not so sure. I think there's a little bit more to this story than, in all due respect, than what we were able to put into a few minutes on the news show. And I have a funny feeling, I know A.C. Wharton, that he didn't just show up on her doorstep one day and start to make these complaints. But what I think is more happening right now, unless we find that A.C. Wharton violated a law, or if she violated a law, I think it's more he said, she said story that's based on a Ring doorbell video. But beyond that, I think there's a bigger story, and it's about the integrity of our neighborhoods. And we have in place an ordinance for Airbnbs that is so loosely written, so gray in so many areas, that virtually anyone can have an Airbnb in their home. And I think that this is really a bigger community-wide problem, and I think that what Wharton has done has just nipped the heels of a really big community problem, and it should be concerning to everybody because it is about the integrity of our homes, the integrity of our neighborhoods, and we should all be concerned. If somebody was running an Airbnb next door to me, I wouldn't be happy about it either.
But Susan, I mean, 6 different agencies, multiple visits.
You know,
surveying the house for brothel activity.
There are people. Mayor Wharton, in all fairness, was a public servant for 30-some-odd years. He knows a lot of people, and he can pick up the phone and he can call someone and he can say, "Can you check into this?" I could pick up the phone. I could call City Hall. I don't know nearly as many people as he does, but somewhere along the line, maybe somebody would listen to me. No, I don't think I could call out the police and the fire and everyone else, but we don't know yet whether he made one call or multiple calls. That wasn't proven yet. So, but I still think that there's a bigger story to it, and I think that you ought to pursue it.
Well, and you know, Councilman Conrad now has introduced a resolution to just tighten up the Airbnb laws.
And I think that if anything comes from this story, ultimately, for the long term, it's giving us stronger codes about who can have an Airbnb and what can be an Airbnb.
Okay, we're running out of time. Otis, why don't you weigh in real quick?
Yeah, let me weigh in very briefly because I have to slightly disagree with Susan on this one. I think the video speaks for itself that there was some pressure applied somewhere to get that many people from that many agencies to show up on this woman's doorstep in such a short period of time. It smacks of some political favoritism somewhere. And if there was nothing going on, then former Mayor Wharton should have sat down and gone on camera to explain his side of it instead of just putting out a quick statement. And frankly, I think Mayor Strickland needs to now go on camera and talk about and find out whether there was any.
Well, they're his employees now.
Well, no, code enforcement is a county.
Well, there may have been some county agencies too, but there were some city agencies involved.
Most of them were city. Most of them were city. Most of them were city. I mean, the police showing up and surveilling for 3 days. That's city, and I just think that the mayor and the former mayor needs to go on camera and talk about this and not put out a quick statement.
Well, I will say this, you know, former Mayor A.C. Wharton has never really been afraid of a camera before. So to me, I was actually surprised when he didn't go on camera. I thought he would just come out and be like, look, Jenny, this is just a misunderstanding, or whatever he was going to say. The fact that he didn't say anything, to me, actually speaks volumes.
Okay, we've got to leave it there. When we come back, Corey Strong, candidate for Congress, will be with us right after this.
Some kids do well in a traditional classroom. But if you're looking for a different approach, K-12 could be the answer. Our online public schools give families another choice. K-12 is tuition-free and available in most states. Here's how it works. Students are taught online by state-certified teachers. The curriculum is fully accredited, and the program gives kids the flexibility to work at their own pace. They can explore subjects they're passionate about and get extra help when they need it from their teachers and their parents. Call or go online today to learn more.
Our students succeed beyond K-12. They learn skills that colleges and universities value.
When a student earns a diploma, they've worked hard for it.
Join the growing community of families who have switched to K-12 and succeeded. Enrollment is open, so call today. K-12, because every child is uniquely brilliant.
Snailin'. Someone looks happy. What's not to be happy about? It's a beautiful day on the open water. I've got a shelf full of cash. Plus, another chance to win later.
Did you add Quick Cash to your Tennessee Cash play?
Nailed it.
A faster chance at fun, a faster chance to win. Tennessee Cash with Quick Cash, only from the Tennessee Lottery. Game-changing fun.
Girls' night this week? Sure. Hit me on my cell phone.
And choose to see our similarities. Let's be bold and appreciate the things that make us unique. Let's use our voices to put an end to bullying and cyberbullying forever. And on Monday, October 7th, let's all stand up for World Day of Bullying Prevention by rocking a blue shirt. Together, we can make bullying a thing of the past. Get your blue shirt at stompoutbullying.org.
Corey Strong, former Shelby County Democratic chairman, is now running for Congress, taking on the incumbent, Steve Cohen, popular incumbent. I think you would agree. You admit you have an uphill battle, but you think there is a distinction that's worth making, and what are you going to run on? How are you going to distinguish yourself?
This race is very simply about who could be the most effective person for the district, and I understand that the congressman has a pretty extensive record and a lot of connections and some money in the bank, but this election is about what our expectations are for the congressman. And if the expectation is just to go to D.C., make some votes and make a name for yourself, or it's to be an active participant and partner at the federal, state, local, and private level to move Memphis forward. And so this race for me is going to be our economy and the role that a congressman should be playing in bringing jobs home to Memphians.
So would you, for example, object to bringing KFC into a judicial committee hearing as he did and got national attention for? Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about there?
Well, I don't have a problem with necessarily making a name for yourself, and a stunt, you know, it's fun, it brings attention. Okay. But if it's going to be chicken, it's got to be Memphis chicken, Richard. Like, come on, like no Chings, no Gus's, right? Right. But also, I think it does go further into the point of you have to be an ambassador for this place at all times. You have to remove yourself yourself and put the place that you represent forward any opportunity you can.
But now you yourself have said that you agree with him on most of the issues.
Certainly.
You think he has a great track record when it comes to constituent service, which we know is very important, especially as a Memphis congressman. And you also, before you entered the race, had to know the track record that he has not lost a primary. The worst he's done is 66%. He's done as well as 91% in his victories in the primary races. So, I mean, that would suggest to me a real long shot here. Yes?
No.
Okay.
One thing I would say is you have to actually present a message, and I think some of the people that ran before me have ran this as a race based on race. Like, vote for me because I'm the person that looks like the constituency, because I'm the black person. This is not the race that I'm running. I'm running on a race to improve the lives of Memphians. Predominantly, our city is black, but that's not the primary focus. I think the second thing is, you are right. I will go to D.C. and I'll probably vote on a lot of the same issues. I'll vote to get rid of the policies that this president has put in place. I'll vote to save Medicare and Social Security. I'll vote to make sure that people have health care. But when I'm done voting, then I will do the work of trying to bring attention and money and resources to Memphis to grow our industry, diversify our economy, and provide real jobs so that people can be at home and realize the American dream.
You know that a congressman is just 1 out of 435. And
no doubt,
there's not much. I would just question how much influence can you really have on the local economy. It sounds to me like you should be running for mayor instead. And you might have more effect on that.
And I've heard that comment. What I would say is, if you looked at the cities around us in the South who've been intentional about growing their economies, about look at Nashville, or Charlotte, or Houston, even Atlanta, there was clearly a concerted effort by all hands that were in leadership in those areas to do this. And I think there's a disconnect here. If you don't think that the policies, the things that are happening economically, there wasn't a policy that preceded that 4 or 5 years ago in D.C., and that the Congress and those lobbyists are a part of that. That's where the captains of industry ensure that the legislative environment that allows them to grow happens, and the congressman's there for that conversation. So if we're not getting that information back and we don't even know where the opportunities exist, nor is the person who is in their face every day as a congressman bringing them back to Memphis to say, here's what we can offer you, then we'll never get to where we need to be as a city.
All right, well, unfortunately, got to cut it off there, but I really appreciate you coming in, and we'll be right back to wrap things up right after this.
I could tell you about my education and qualifications. I could tell you that I've received over $1 million from my clients from some of the strongest, most powerful insurance companies in America. But what I want to tell you right now is that when you select the Reeves Law Firm, you're not only a client, you're a part of our family. I have gone to war for my country, and I'm prepared to go to war for you. Call me immediately at 901-352-0333 or find me at beyourvoice.com. Let us be your...
4 years ago, you wanted change. We're delivering that change, improving services to all neighborhoods and advancing equity for all citizens, hiring more police officers and paving more roads, increasing opportunities for our youth. Today, we have 20,000 more jobs, $19 billion in development. Do we have more challenges? Of course we do. But we've made real progress, and Memphis has momentum. Together, we can do even more the next 4 years.
They've stormed beaches and freed countries. They've raised our flag and our hope. They've been called leathernecks. They've been called devil dogs. But above all, they're called Marines.
Next, Ellen, Harrison Ford from Pets 2.
Who do you play?
I play Harrison Ford as a dog.
Plus, Dr. Ruth.
We'll talk about sex. I just talk about that.
Watch Ellen, Monday at 4 on Local 24.
Monday at 9 on Local Memphis Live, our friends at Electrolyte Juice Bar are helping us to live our best life. They're unveiling new drink flavors right here on Local Memphis Live, and we sit down with UT plastic surgeons to help give you the makeover of a lifetime at 9.
Thanks for joining us for Local 24 this week. We'll see you next time.